Hello, my name is Dr. Ingrid Mitchell, and this is an asynchronous professional learning titled Providing Versatile Vocabulary Instruction. Let's begin. In today's session, you'll be able to determine characteristics of effective vocabulary instruction. You'll focus on three categories of vocabulary, and they are academic, schema, and domain specific. You'll utilize text to pull out vocabulary for the purposes of categorization and strategies specific for vocabulary. We'll learn a 6-step process developed by Marzano, as well as review quickly a 7-step. We'll review strategies for determining meaning of vocabulary within context. And if you don't know already, today's vocabulary word is vocabulary. Vocabulary. And that is the body of words used in a particular language. Now, whenever participating in a professional learning, it's always good to hear what current research tells us about the particular area of focus, vocabulary. Let's start with our own state of Tennessee, and they tell us that vocabulary is the largest determinant of comprehension of language, and this is found within our 10 ELA standards. Research also tells us that good vocabulary instruction provides multiple exposures through rich and varied activities to meaningful information about a word, which is great because your question should be now, what are those rich and varied activities? We'll get into that very shortly. Now, our National Reading Panel and National Institute of Literacy tells us that students learn vocabulary indirectly and directly. Well, if they're learning it indirectly, that means they're casually listening to conversations and learning vocabulary. But they also could be read to and learning vocabulary. But if they read a lot on their own, from going to the library or library books at home, they'll learn some vocabulary. But as far as purposeful, meaningful instruction by a certified teacher, students want to learn vocabulary directly and explicitly, individual words, but also through a word learning strategy. What would that be? Well, Nelson tells us that we need to provide continuous instruction on the phonological awareness piece, which is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate phonemes. That is a continued practice that needs to be seen in elementary, maybe heavy on primary, but still exposed to in that 3 through 5 grade band. Students also need to be exposed to expressive vocabulary, some dialogue within text, but it also being linked to word level decoding. Well, in 3 through 5 grade band, we need to continue to practice those decoding of syllables within words, and then moving on to direct speech, identifying multi-meaning words, but also multi-meaning words and the grammatical syntax and the way it is used within text. Let's look at what Kuntz tells us. Third bullet down. He tells us to ensure that we plan and organize for language explaining. Well, what does that mean? Well, our text in our curriculum may give us 3 or 4 schema vocabulary words to focus on within a particular story, but there may be some additional academic and domain specific embedded within text. You want to go ahead and pull those out for the purpose of setting the stage of explaining in a variety of ways. We'll get into that in just a moment, but then allowing an opportunity for students to apply what is being learned and then give it back to you so that you can see that they're able to analyze and convey that they understood the meaning of the word. Now, who is this going to affect? The diverse student population of SPED, as well as another category of English language learners, but it will also affect those bubble students who are on the cuffs of either showing growth or not, but then it will also most definitely affect those advanced learners who are already at the 90th percentile, but still need to show some achievement growth. Again, continued phonological awareness, expressive vocabulary, multi-meaning words, but also infused with grammatical syntax of how words are being used in text and then setting the stage for providing strategies for explanation for students to be able to give back to you in the way that they've understood the word. Now's the time to take out paper, pencil, or pen and take some notes. Here is our first 7-step strategy that Calderon tells us to use. Be sure again to write these down, because in a moment you'll watch a video and you want to be able to tell me what strategy is the teacher using to teach vocabulary. Calderon tells us step 1, become familiar with the word, manipulate the word by saying the word. Step 2, there should be a sentence provided with the word embedded within the sentence so students can extract the meaning, maybe through the index in which the sentence is written. Once they've done that, then they will be able to determine the definition of a word, not through the use of a dictionary, but through the way the sentence or sentences are written to convey the meaning of the word. Now, write it out. This is where students are going to provide their own meaningful sentence using the word that is a focus. What about step 5? Some aspects of the word. Are there prefixes and suffixes attached to the word? That affects the meaning of the word. Engage the word. Is there a song, a video, a poem where the word is embedded? And reading or written summaries in text. Again, seeing the word within text to extract the meaning of the word. Now, let's continue with that pencil and paper and write down specifically these 6 strategies for teaching vocabulary. Well, first, Marzano tells us to describe the word. That means that the teacher will give a description, an explanation of a new term, not through a dictionary or a glossary, but asking the students, do you know the word? Explain the word. A video, tell a story. Do you have a skit for the word? Or what about some current events that are going on that can help explain the word? Step 2, what about restating the word? The students write and restate in their own words a description, explanation, or example given in class. This means that if you have ELL students, maybe they can translate. Do they have some personal vocabulary or some writing aids for memory? Step 3, what about drawing a picture, a symbol, a graphic representing the word? Something that's non-linguistic, a mnemonic device to help prompt memory of the word. Step 4, what activities can you provide for manipulating the word? Here is where your special features come in. Is there a prefix or a suffix, a synonym or antonym related words? Or again, what about a translation of the word in another language? This helps prompt vocabulary, meaning. Step 5, discuss the word. This is where students discuss terms with one another and share what they think about the word and what it means to them. Offer some clarity. Protocol with the think, pair, share. Discuss the meaning, and again, have a pictorial representation of the word. And step 6, what about gaming with the word? Interacting with the word. Students can get involved with the games and allow them to play with vocabulary words, and this will most definitely aid in the memorization and understanding of the word. Jeopardy, concentration, Pictionary, partner games. Now, do you have your notes in front of you? As we watch the video, you want to determine what strategies are these teachers using to teach vocabulary instruction.
The next word, drumroll please. Listen to this sentence. I promised not to hang by my feet. Stella Luna sighed. Stella Luna sighed. Stella Luna sighed. Say sighed. 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 Do the hand motions with us. Say sighed. Sighed. Sighed means sighed means side mean?
Who can read the word of the day? This one's a little bit tricky. If it tricks you, that's okay. I'll give you some clues to help you out. Chastity, go ahead. Everybody tracking the page. You don't need to track Chastity right now because you have it right in front of you.
Scarce.
Beautiful. Everybody, the word is scarce. What word?
Scarce.
Good. Chastity, please read that word for us. Not enough of something. So let me give you one example, and then you can give me all of the brilliant examples that you have. Hands down, let me give you one example. There are 24, 25 of you. If I had some pencils, and every single one of you needed one of those pencils, tracking up here, every single one of you needed those pencils, but I only had 12, then my pencils would be scarce. Or the amount of pencils that I had would be scarce because I don't have enough pencils for all of you that need a pencil. What is something else that is scarce? And some of you might be thinking about history class like DeAndre already said, which is such a brilliant connection.
Eradicate can be either something that is physically gotten rid of, so like you could eradicate an entire group of people in war, but you also could eradicate someone's feelings. So if Gabriel was really nervous about something and one of his friends did something to make him feel better, then you could say his feelings of anxiety were eradicated. They were totally gotten rid of. Trisha. Yep, demolished work. It also, though, has a little bit of a different connotation. Demolish, almost the picture is like pushing something down or crushing it. Like if you demolish a building, it's when it like falls down. This one doesn't have a fall down. It has like a wipe out, like get rid of it entirely. So it's a little different. Yeah, like a nuclear bomb would eradicate an entire civilization, technically. Let's hope not. Yes. Counteract is when something pushes back on something else. Does counteracting always eradicate?
Now pause the video for a moment, take a look at your notes, and discuss what strategies did the teachers use in each of the vocabulary explicit instructional scenes. Now, we're taking a look at vocabulary in context. And when we see vocabulary in context, in order to determine the meaning of an unfamiliar word, authors can use a synonym, antonym, definition embedded, an example, or you have to infer by using the general sense. With that in mind, let's take a look at this particular text titled, Curious About Careers, Mechanical Engineering. This is a 5th grade text. Do you like to build with blocks? Are you curious about how solar panels turn sun rays into electricity? Have you wondered how planes stay in the air? Do you wonder why putting gas into cars causes wheels to turn? Do you like to design and create new things? If you do, a career in mechanical engineering might be right for you. Let's take a look at that first word circle in paragraph 1. The word is curious. The word is curious. Now within the first 3 sentences or questions, there are some synonyms embedded for the word curious. What are they? Did you say wondered? You're exactly correct. The author says, have you wondered how planes are in the air? Or do you wonder why they're putting gas into cars causes the wheels to turn? That is the meaning of curious. And we've identified a synonym within text. Let's look at the second word, the word design. The author says, do you like to design and create new things? Well, there's a synonym for the word design embedded in text. Do you see? The word design and create go together. They are synonyms. Vocabulary and context using the strategy of a synonym within text. Let's go to paragraph 2. A mechanical engineer is responsible for coming up with and designing mechanical systems. Mechanical systems can include machine design, heating and cooling equipment, power generation, and product design. Products like the latest cell phone begin with an engineer coming up with an idea. What is a mechanical engineer? What context clues does the author give as to the explanation of a mechanical engineer? What do they do? Did you say that the author has given a definition embedded within text? Then you are correct. Well, what is the definition? It is someone who is responsible for coming up and designing mechanical systems. That is a mechanical engineer. You are correct. And that is a strategy of using a definition within text. The author also gives some examples. And what are they? Mechanical systems that a mechanical engineer would develop would include design, heating and cooling equipment, power generation, and product design. So within this paragraph, the author has included a definition and examples for the term mechanical engineer. Let's look at the third paragraph. Mechanical engineers are in high demand right now. That means that there are a lot of job openings for mechanical engineers, but there aren't enough people to fill those jobs because there's a high need for engineers. And the work requires specialized knowledge, and engineers get paid more than some of the other careers. The concept here is high demand. What does that mean? And what does the author use in order for the reader to understand the meaning of high demand? Did you say that the author was using a definition? Yes, and it says in the second sentence that means there's a lot of job openings for mechanical engineers. But if you also used a general sense with the information given, you can determine the meaning of the concept high demand. Vocabulary and context takes some planning, front loading for your students. You have to pull out vocabulary that may not be identified within your curriculum, and then determine the ways in which you want to explain how the authors use synonym, antonym, definition, or an example, even general sense, in order for the reader to get a understanding of how words are being used in context. Now, there are three types of vocabularies that you'll see within text: academic, schema, and domain-specific vocabulary. Academic is always defined as words that are traditionally used in academic dialogue and text, while schema vocabulary is an internal representation of the text, may be found in characters, event setting, or nuances of the setting of the story. Domain-specific vocabulary then is directly related to the course or class for which you are writing or reading. Science, social studies, geography, for example. Now, let's take a look at this bank of words. In looking at academic, schema, and domain-specific, where do you think these bank of words belong? Slogan, explain, predict, compare, electoral votes, contrast, summarize, election, nominated, campaign, constituents, and polls. Where would you place them? And how would you strategize to teach these vocabulary terms? Check your work. The academic language found in the bank would be predict, compare, contrast, summarize. These are terms that will be seen across content. However, a variance that I employed for these particular words is that in the book Grace for President, the words campaign, constituents, polls, slogan, election, electoral votes, and nominated are schema words for the text. It sets the stage for the book. However, if we were to use campaign, constituents, polls, slogan, election, electoral votes, and nominating in terms of teaching social studies and the domain of presidency and voting, these would be domain-specific vocabularies. Do you see the difference in usage? Stop the video for a moment and discuss with each other how you see how these similar words or same words are being utilized in two different ways. Now, let's get into our specific curriculum. In CKLA, we have a flip book, and the vocabulary is ring and ashes. And the text tells us, ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Ask yourself first, where does ring and ashes fall? Academic, schema, domain. Now, let's discuss, how would you teach ring and the multi-meaning array of what ring will mean? What about what ring means as it is associated to this picture? What about posies? Do you see a posy in this pic? But this is the image given from the flip book. How would you teach it in the steps? Or what vocabulary and context would you provide in addition to this flip book image? The same question is posed for the word ashes. How would you teach it directly and explicitly? Well, the image given doesn't show ashes. What text would you supplement? What would you show in order for students to get a sense and a visual and be able to apply it to you to give back their explanation and understanding of the word ring, posies, ashes? Pause and discuss. Well, in this image, there are some particular vocabulary given. Jealous, plumpest, milkmaid, balanced. As we look at this picture, you will read, Peggy the milkmaid was going to the market. I'll buy the plumpest or fattest chickens from Farmer Brown, she said, and they will lay eggs each morning. When those eggs hatch, I'll have more chickens. Oh, I'll look so lovely that all the boys will want to dance with me at the fair, and all the girls will be jealous. How would you teach milkmaid? Some of the features include that it's a compound word, but are there some vocabulary and context here in this sentence? Does the picture help convey the meaning of milkmaid? Possibly. What about the next sentence? It says, I'll buy the plumpest or the fattest chickens. Is there a synonym embedded? Yes. So we can do vocabulary and context. But what about the concept of jealous? It's a feeling. Can students infer that from the picture? So what would you have to provide them in addition to the curriculum to get them to understand the word jealous? This is where we have to think back on those 6 strategies. Or the 7th step in order to teach the word jealous. Now let's take a look at this text. This comes from our EL curriculum, 3rd grade. In reading this text, what words would you pull out that is separate from what the EL has noted? I was fearful that the soldiers would discover the school, but the girls were clever. They slipped in and out of the school at different times, so as not to arouse suspicion. And when the boys saw the soldiers near the gate, They distracted them. Well, one of the words I think that I would pull out is the word clever. Now, why would I pull out the word clever and discuss it and give an opportunity for students to explain what they think the word clever means? Because within the text, there are some examples of how the characters were clever. Let's take a look. Students could say, I believe. The word clever means to come up with different ideas of how to solve a problem. Here's the answer in the text. They slipped in and out of school at different times, so as not to arouse suspicion. So that is vocabulary and context. And we can also use the 6-step or 7-step for arouse and suspicion. Pause the video and discuss some other pull-out vocabularies that you would use and what strategies would you incorporate to attack those terms. Now, let's look at 5th grade AF curriculum. This is from middle school students' work to make their lunchrooms friendlier places. This is an auxiliary text from Unit 1, Wonder. What vocabulary would you pull out and what strategies would you use? The 6-step, 7, or vocabulary and context? Well, it says for many kids, middle schools is not easy. There can be hurt feelings in groups and bullying. There are challenges of puberty and low self-esteem. Some kids may have a little too much self-esteem. What words would you pull out and what strategies would you use to attack the terms and teach explicitly? Pause. Now, if your students ask you or a colleague asks you, what is vocabulary? What would you say vocabulary is? Your response is that vocabulary is the body of words used in a particular language. As a follow-up, let's discuss what were your biggest takeaways to this asynchronous lesson. Deposit them into Schoology. And our next steps to PLC is that you will record a snippet of your vocabulary instruction to share to our PLC group. We'll see you next time, and thank you for participating in this asynchronous PLC.